And why don't we make sure through the GI Bill that every single young person has access to a college education? Why can't we do something like that? Which is the same spirit that Harry Truman had, and the same spirit that John Kennedy had, the same spirit that Bill Clinton had, the same spirit that we have now. But here's the problem. Over the last several years, that politics, the politics of hope, has been at odds with the dominant politics of the political party in power, which is built on cynicism, and is built on fear, and is built on division. And we've gotten accustomed to sort of thinking that that's how politics has to be. Except, here's the good news. Here's the good news. I've been traveling around the country over the last month, and everywhere I go, you get a sense that people, they're looking for something different now. They're looking for something new. They have looked around and they've said, you know what, we're in a serious mood right now, Jack. They're in a somber mood because they recognize that some of the challenges we face right now are challenges that if we don't deal with, may result in us passing on an America that's a little poorer and a little meaner than the one we inherited from our parents. And that's not acceptable. That's un-American. And so they look at the healthcare system and they say, if we're spending more money than any nation on earth on healthcare, why do we have 46 million uninsured? And why do we have families that are seeing their co-payments and deductibles and premiums going up? And why can't we do some common sense things like creating a prescription drug plan where we're negotiating with the drug companies for the best price? Why? That shouldn't be a partisan battle. That's common sense. Why wouldn't we want to make sure every child has decent primary care so they're not ending up in the emergency room with an asthma attack that all of us have to pay for? Why wouldn't we do that? That's common sense. They say, why not? And they take a look at our education system and they know our kids are going to have to compete. They know globalization is here. And so they say to themselves, why is this bickering and why are we arguing about stuff that's not relevant? Why aren't we focused on making sure that every child has good math instruction and science instruction? And why are we making sure our teachers are paid better? And why are we making sure that they're given the professional development they need? And why don't we start early childhood education classes for the kids who are behind so they can catch up? We know we can do that. And why wouldn't we, at a time where we know every young person needs a college education? Why would we have a Congress making college education more expensive? Raising the interest rates on student loans, why wouldn't we lower them? And they say, why not? Why don't we do that? And then they take a look at energy. And they say, look, we understand gas prices are going down, but you know, we have this funny feeling that after the election, gas prices might go back up. So we wouldn't mind if somebody actually had an energy policy that made sense. And then they look at the fact we're sending $800 million a day to some of the most hostile nations on earth, funding both sides of the war on terrorism. And by the way, it's true, Sheldon, there's a couple of holdouts, the current chairman of the Environment Committee, and a couple of scientists in the White House who don't believe in climate change. But there are another 10,000 scientists around the world who say this is something we might want to worry about. So why wouldn't we harness the power of the sun and the power of the wind and create more fuel-efficient vehicles that can create jobs and create alternative energy sources? Why wouldn't we do something like that? Why not? And most of all, they take a look at the thousands of our finest young men and women, some of whom are not coming back and are remembered only in the hearts of mourning loved ones. Some who come back, limbs gone, nerves shattered, having spent $350 billion, squandered the goodwill of most countries around the world, and yet we have the President's National Intelligence Estimate telling us that more terrorists exist now than they did before the war started. We're probably less safe. And people look at that and they say, well, we are patriots. There's not a single person here who wouldn't pick up arms to prevent another 9/11, but we also understand that the might of our military has to be matched by the finesse of our diplomacy and the strength of our alliances. And why wouldn't we craft real national security strategy. Why are we just talking tough? Why don't we act smart and be tough? Why not? And so people are in a different kind of mood. They're paying attention. And those who are in power right now in Washington have to watch out, because when the American people pay attention, good things happen. You know, at their core, the American people are a decent people. They get confused sometimes. You know, they listen to Rush Limbaugh. That's confusing. And then let's face it. I mean, there's a darker side to our nature. At each juncture in our history, there have been times where we've been divided, and we've turned on each other. And politicians have demagogued and taken advantage of that. But when they pay attention, most of the time, their instincts are good, and they realize that we can do better than what we're doing right now. And that's the enormous opportunity we have. And all we've got to do in the next 3 days is make sure that not only do we hope for a better country, not only do we hope for a better Rhode Island, but we also work for it.
I hit the Snapchat.
And 3 days investment is such a small thing.
Zoom in.
3 days of knocking on doors, 3 days of volunteering in one of the campaign offices, 3 days of making some phone calls, 3 days of calling your friends, the cousin who's always sitting in front of the TV watching Sports Center and never votes, just calling him up and just saying, you know what, this time, why don't you spend 15 minutes going to the polls? It can make such an enormous difference. It's that ingredient, hope, that is going to put us over the top. And in case anybody starts faltering in terms of hope, just remember something Dr. King said. Two weeks after the march on the Edmund Pettus Bridge had been turned back, what was called Bloody Sunday. Some of you will recall the horses and the billy clubs and the tear gas, and people were feeling defeated. They felt like, well, we're never going to integrate the South. We're never going to get people the right to vote. And Dr. King gathered them all up in a church. And he said, I know it's hard. Remember this. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It bends towards justice. It doesn't bend on its own. It bends because we put our hands on that arc and we bend it in the direction of justice. And if everybody in Rhode Island over the next 3 days is paying attention and is hopeful and is willing to work on behalf of that hope and puts their hand on that arc and bends it in the direction of justice, I guarantee you that we're going to have Charlie Fogarty as the next governor of Rhode Island, and we're going to have Sheldon Whitehouse as the next great senator from Rhode Island, and he's going to join up with Jack Reed and me and Patrick Kennedy and all these elected officials, and together we're going to start changing America. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you.